like a DVD, only it's bigger.
Yeah.
Big like a record.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 257 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 257. I'm Zig with your Nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. I forgot to mention at the end of last show, and I was going to mention it. Hopefully you stuck around to the very, very end and listened to the theme song at the end, because I built a college theme music end song. My brain's not with me. Anyway, I created an end song to match with Zig's topic of college radio, and he liked it. So, listen to those. We've got our soundtrack volume 1 out. I will be compiling a volume 2 soon. Just all the various music we play at the end. So take a listen to those. Enjoy them. Hopefully you will. I think there's some good stuff on there. Anyway, that's all I had. You got anything you're ready to take it off to the nerdery side of the house?
I'm ready to do a quick Nerdery. This is kind of a short form one.
Might not be too bad after our last one, because our last one was an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah. I think this one may be less than an hour. I've just got a few minutes, and I don't know how long yours is, but this one's a quick one.
All right, fire it away.
We're going to talk about Laserdiscs, and I'm going to get a little technical on here. Laserdisc.
So Zig's talked about this before on the show as well. He likes the Laserdisc format. He thought the Laserdisc format was great. I never got into it like he did, but he has been really, really all over the Laserdisc. I have very limited exposure to it. I had a friend in high school that they were really, really big on the Laserdisc. Matter of fact, the very first movie I ever saw on Laserdisc was, damn it, you've covered it on a show, Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo Banzai.
That's the very first movie I ever saw on Laserdisc, because they had it, and that was my exposure to it. So
I like physical media. Because
speaking of Buckaroo Banzai, I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt you. I'm so sorry I'm doing that. But here, squirrel. John Lithgow is the new Dumbledore in the new Harry Potter TV
series. I heard that.
I'm kind of excited for that.
They went with John Lithgow.
Yeah. So, speaking of Buckaroo Banzai, but anyway. He was in Buckaroo Banzai, right?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
He was John Morphin.
Yes, thank you.
Not John Big Booty.
Right. Sorry, I interrupted you. Continue.
Go away, you monkey boy. Laugh while you can, the monkey boy. That guy was crazy.
Well, let's see here.
Phillips Pioneer.
I lost you. You went frozen for me.
I did?
Yeah, right after you said a monkey boy. So.
Laserdisc. Laserdisc is a home video format and the first commercial optical disc storage medium. It was developed by Phillips Pioneer and the movie studio MCA. The format was initially marketed in the United States in 1978 under the name DiscoVision, a brand used by MCA. As Pioneer took a greater role in the development and promotion, the format was rebranded LaserVision. While the Laserdisc brand originally referred specifically to Pioneer's line of players, the term gradually came to be used generically to refer to the format as a whole. It's a genericized trademark. The discs typically have a diameter of 300 millimeters or 11.8 inches, similar in size to the 12-inch 305 millimeter LP or phonograph record. Unlike most later optical disc formats, Laserdisc is not fully digital. It stores an analog video signal. It just has a digital delivery system. Many titles feature CD-quality digital audio, and Laserdisc was the first home video format to support surround sound. Its 425 to 440 horizontal lines of resolution was nearly double that of competing consumer videotape formats, VHS and Betamax, and approaching the resolution of later achieved by DVDs. Now, I will say this, Laserdisc and DVDs, the audio is the same. The video quality on a DVD is better, but it's not enough better for the human eye to notice a difference. You know what I mean? Like you can measure it as being better, but you can't really see it. So for all intents and purposes, the Laserdisc is as good as DVD, and it has the same function as DVD. You can go by chapters.
What about Blu-ray?
Blu-ray is better. You
Okay.
do notice a difference in Blu-ray, just like 4K, you notice a difference between 4K and Blu-ray.
Mhm. You know, I think I read somewhere too, because you've got 8K 8K
Oh yeah,
video
8K's
out
out now.
Yeah, 8K is out. I have read that we are about to the maximum that the visual spectrum.
The human eye can only pick up so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, because you probably can't notice the difference between 4 and 8K, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that we will ever get past 8K. I'm gonna look that up while you're sitting there talking.
Yeah, I don't think that your eye can perceive like the difference the difference between the Laserdisc and the DVD. You can't really tell the difference because it's pretty close. And audio is the same. Although I will say this, because it is an analog format, the lighting sometimes is a little different. So that might be the factor that most people point to, just because the analog signal has a different lighting background than the digital signal does. Many titles do feature CD quality digital audio. It was the first home video format to support surround sound. In contrast, Laserdisc was significantly more popular in Japan and in wealthier regions of Southeast Asia, including Singapore and Malaysia, and it became a dominant rental video format in Hong Kong during the 1990s. Its superior audio-visual quality made it a favorite among videophiles and film enthusiasts through its lifespan. So for a long time, the Criterion Collection wasn't released on videotape. It was released on Laserdisc, and later on you could get it on DVD or Blu-ray. The technologies and concepts developed for Laserdisc laid the groundwork for subsequent optical media formats, including CD, DVD, and Laserdisc player production ended in July of 2009 with Pioneer's exit from the market. So you could still get a Laserdisc player and titles up until 2009. The origins of optical recording date back to 1963. Now, there's reports that the very, very first concept piece or prototype of this actually came out in like 1958. But that no longer exists. So apparently something happened to that prototype, but we can trace the prototype back to 1963. So we know it goes back at least that far, probably a few years before that. David Paul Gregg and James Russell developed a transparent disc-based system later patented in 1970. MCA acquired the rights to this technology in 1968, and separately by 1969, Philips had developed a video disc using reflective technology, which offered advantages over the transparent method. MCA and Philips began collaborating in the early 70s and publicly demonstrated the video disc format as early as 1972. Internally, the technology was known by several names, including optical video disc systems, reflective optical video discs, laser optical video discs, and video long play. The format was commercially introduced as MCA DiscoVision in December 11th of 1978 in a test market launch in Atlanta, Georgia, 2 years after the debut of VHS and 4 years before the introduction of the CD. Now, I will say this. VHS was actually released earlier. However, at the time of the Disco Man release, the Disco Man was actually cheaper than the VCR. This changed dramatically a few years later because VCRs, when they first came out, were very expensive. The CD is actually based on that Laserdisc technology. The first Laserdisc title released in North America was the MCA DiscoVision edition of Jaws on December 15th, 1978. Philips produced the players while MCA manufactured the discs. However, the partnership ultimately proved unsuccessful and was dissolved after several years. In 1980, Pioneer acquired a majority stake in the format and began marketing it as both LaserVision and as Laserdisc. Some release informally referred to it as Laser Video Disc. Pioneer's Laserdisc players debuted in Japan in October of 1981. My player is a Laserdisc player. It is from the 90s, and it is. They had 20 years to work on it. This thing is practically indestructible because I'm still using it. It's still got. Now I do have to take a air duster and clean it out every so often. It has a separate drawer for CDs, so you can also play CDs on it. By 1984, Philips and Sony had introduced LV-ROM, a version of the format designed to store digital data, offering a capacity of 3.28 gigabytes, foreshadowing the capabilities of later formats such as CD-ROM and DVD-ROM. You could also put movies on the LV-ROM, although those never made it over here. They did have a video CD version in Japan that is not as small as a DVD or a Blu-ray. It's a little bit bigger, but it is smaller than the Laserdisc. That fared okay in their markets, but Japan was bigger on Laserdisc than anything else. They really weren't real big on videotape because of the quality, even though they sold that stuff over there. Laserdisc never achieved the mass market success. The format gained modest popularity in select markets and developed a niche following in Japan. The market penetration reached approximately 10% of households by 1999. So 10% of the households in Japan had a Laserdisc player. It was even smaller for that VCD. In the United States, it was about 2% of households. So that's roughly 2 million owners of a player. As of 2021, Laserdisc retains a small collector community in the United States and Japan, including me. In Europe, the format remains obscure, but it's all limited in institutional use. Notably, the BBC employed Laserdisc for their BBC Doomsday Project in the mid-1980s, whereas, they had the problem where they originally had everything was made on film and then converted over to videotape in the BBC. But to make base in the 1970s, after it was broadcast, they erased the tapes and used it again. Which is why we lost so much Doctor Who, and we had to get it from different parts of the world. The BBC, in recognizing their mistake, started this thing called the Doomsday Project, where they would record things on these laser discs. They stored them just like our Library of Congress in a vault, but they're on Laserdisc, and Laserdisc is more because it's thicker.
Mm-hmm.
It's about an eighth of an inch thick. It doesn't allow the moisture to penetrate into it like CDs and DVDs do. Blu-ray, they figured out how to fix that problem so you don't get CD or DVD rot, which is why it's important if you live in a damp climate to keep your DVDs and CDs in a place where they can stay dry. Because if you do have a lot of moisture where you live, they will get the rot, which basically gets in between the coating and that metal that's in them, which is just a thin disc of metal. That's just to give it structure. Because what it's actually reading is the reflective layer. When that gets interrupted, that's where you get problems with CDs and DVDs. It was largely supplanted by the DVD format in the early 2000s. The last Laserdisc title released in North America was Paramount's Bringing Out the Dead on October 3rd of 2000. And in Japan, new titles continued to be released until September 21st of 2001, with the final film being the Hong Kong action movie Tokyo Raiders from Golden Harvest. The last known Laserdisc release of any kind was Onto Station Volume 1018, a karaoke title issued exclusively in Japan on March 21st, 2007. But they didn't release any new titles. They kept producing them until they quit making the laser discs. And I believe, did I say? I just said it. Sorry, it's a lot of dates. 2009. So a standard Laserdisc uses the home video format of 11.81 inches in diameter, which I said before is roughly the size of a phonograph record, which is why you can store them in the same shelves in your house. They store an analog video using composite signal format, offering picture quality comparable to videotape style C format, which is what television stations use. So again, not quite as good as DVD, but it's really hard to tell the difference. However, the better part of DVD is you get a later one, you can plug it into an HDMI cable, which has a better signal transfer than some of the composite stuff. So if you plugged your DVD player in through composite and your Laserdisc player in through composite, they look the same. But if you use the HDMI cable that comes with your DVD player, or later DVD players, it does look a little better. But it's because of the signal transfer, not because of the actual technology itself.
Right.
Audio is the same, though. It's pulse code modulation, and you can run surround sound, Dolby Digital, and there is a digital analog conversion that's usually going on. Usually via FM modulation, which is how we get radio and television signals. They're very shiny. I don't know if I can show one because I actually have one right here. I like to keep mine in plastic.
Oh, like you look like you were looking for it.
It's actually right below my feet.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was just looking to open up the plastic, and I don't know. Yeah, it's so shiny.
No, cuts out in the green screen.
Oh, that's too bad. See, that's how big it is.
Well, and it looked like a CD or a DVD or Blu-ray.
It's just really big.
It's a disc.
But it's a lot thicker as well, and I think that's why that is why it lasted longer. Now they can get scratched, so you do have to be careful with them. But they're less likely to get scratched than a CD, again, because it is thicker. But they also don't hold as much information as the DVD or the or a Blu-ray does. Therefore, you'll have to flip the disc over, and if it's a real big one, you'll get two discs. So you play the one side, then you flip it over to side B. But there's a lot less crosstalk on it. It is better in NTSC than PAL, even though they used it for BBC idents, which is PAL was the signal that they have in England because of the audio that went with color, which we have talked about before. I prefer this format just because it's so long lasting, and I like the big books that come with the thing because they do have books and things with them, as well as the cardboard sleeves. There's more things to hold on to than like a DVD because it's smaller, or like a CD. It's more visceral to me, but I think that's just because of the size. I just like it better. And of course, because it's thicker, it lasts longer. Again, assuming you keep all your stuff dry. The laser is not as high velocity as luminosity. Anyway, it doesn't run as well as the Blu-ray laser, because it is a red laser, just like a CD player or DVD player, which does not hold. It does not scan as much information. They did not learn this until much later on, when they were experimenting with different types. The Pioneer DVL9, introduced in 1996, was both Pioneer's first consumer DVD player and then the first combination DVD LD player. I believe that's what I have. And I got it. I got it used with a bunch of other stuff, and I've added to the collection over time. I just love it. I love to play with it. It just makes me happy. When I got a DVD player, I got a DVD player before I got this Laserdisc player. I was always really into it because I always thought it was cool. I had a couple of friends who had them. I also had friends who had VCDs, which I've made an episode for. We'll talk about later on. But like in some cases, if you want a good quality version of Star Wars where hand shot first, you're gonna have to get it on Laserdisc. You might be able to find a VHS copy, but they were rare. Mostly they were sold to rental stores where you could pick it up that way. But the DVD player, or the Laserdisc, they sold millions of those. So they're out there readily available. So if you really want to get the original Star Wars, I'd say get it on Laserdisc because it's actually going to be cheaper than trying to find that VHS copy. And the Laserdisc is more likely to have survived. Luckily with VHS, even though it's on tape, it is in a plastic case, which does help the survival rate of that stuff. But it is on magnetic tape, so the more times you watch it, if you don't keep your stuff clean and magnetically free, you're going to get magnetic buildup on the heads, and that will eventually erase your videotape. Laserdisc looks the same the first time you play it as the last time you play it, as long as you keep it, cleaned. And don't scratch it up. It does have the advantage of that content protection code instructions the player to refuse commands to skip a specific part, such as fast forwarding through copyright warnings. So you can't fast forward past those on Laserdisc players. I think they also did that on DVDs as well. Like you could fast forward, but you couldn't fast forward past that. And you can skip chapters as well as fast forward and fast rewind, which you couldn't skip chapters on VHS or Betamax. You can on DVDs, which I think is great. And I can say that the CD player on the Laserdisc player actually is better than just a plain CD player, because it's the connections are a little higher quality. It is not as small. It was more expensive at the time, but right before they went out of business, in the early 2000s, in the late 90s, you could actually buy a Laserdisc player pretty cheap, as well as the titles, because people were moving away from the format, especially once DVD came out, because they are larger. They don't fit on the same shelf as a CD, but they do fit on the same shelf as an LP. It is not. The early Laserdiscs did have disc rot and laser rot, because they weren't as thick. The thickening of it is what protected those. Consequently, most of those were taken out of the market. So most of everything that you get was made after like 1980, when Pioneer went into the business. So anything after 1980 is usually fine. Again, unless it's been intentionally scratched up, because it is fairly scratch resistant as well. Sorry. The VCDs are much like DVDs, again, the ones that they use in Japan. However, the VCDs were more prone to scratching. They are less They're less resolute than a DVD is, which is less resolute than a Blu-ray player is or a Laserdisc. So, and again, they were fairly pricey when they came out, and the films were pricey when you bought them, but they did come down in price in the 90s. And you can go out and find working ones now for a fraction of the cost back in the day. They are becoming harder to come by because, it's been 20 years since they made them. So, but it is something you should at least look at and check out because it's important to know these things to understand. Like we talk about music and stuff like that. The increase in technology affects the music we listen to and the films we see because they're able to do more and understand more just by building these projects. If that makes sense, they understand more how the signal works now after doing these things, whereas they didn't understand it as well before. It was just, it made noise. And so that, when you played it through the speaker, it made, you could hear it. They kind of understood these things better in these research facilities going on at Pioneer and Philips and even the MCA film division. They understand how the signal gets from the device to your brain a little easier. So it's important that these things happen, and it's important to understand why we do these things as much as how we do these things. But that's about it for Laserdisc. Like I said, it wasn't going to be a long one. It was just a discussion on these things. They did not sell as well as VHS. VHS was cheaper, and it sold better. It also beat out Betamax, which was a higher quality, but it was more expensive. But VHS was ubiquitous everywhere. And when people finally got the ability to get DVD, they went away from VHS because the quality was so poor. But these Laserdiscs there was something that was going on at the same time that, again, wasn't readily adopted in the United States, but it was still around. It was something you saw. I had a couple of friends who had them. I kind of enjoyed going over their place and watching the stuff on, the Criterion Collection stuff. Because again, a bunch of film geeks I grew up around. So yeah, it was nice to have it on VHS in my house, but I'd rather go see it with the decent quality. And now that I have one, I like to watch this stuff every once in a while. It's like, oh, hey, I'm going to do this on this movie. Oh, hey, I have that on Laserdisc. I'm going to pop it in the Laserdisc player and run it. But yeah, that's about it for Laserdiscs. Thanks for letting me kind of geek out on that.
Well, and Laserdisc and Betamax were both more expensive than VHS, and they lost in the video wars because VHS had porn.
Yeah.
Look it up anywhere you want to look. That's why VHS won the war. That same thing did not occur when DVD and Blu-ray were competing each other. Blu-ray.
Oh yeah. HD, DVD.
Yeah. It wasn't the same thing. But I was looking up some things as you were talking, and I didn't hear if you said this or not, but all told, there were approximately 30,000 movies put on disc.
Yes.
On Laserdisc.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which I thought was amazing. And then the other thing I looked up, yes, 8K is the limit of our human perception. 16K and beyond is really not going to be a thing. And they're even talking about that most major manufacturers have pulled their 8K because there's not enough difference for the human eye to perceive. That the direction they're going now is the more immersive 360 experiences.
Yeah,
is where the next direction will be going for video. So that'll be very
because you can only get it so clear. At one point, your eye stops being able to tell the difference.
Yeah, and that's where we are. 8K is it. Your eyes can't tell any more difference than that. So they're now focusing more on color and brightness and things like that. So that's where the next genre is going. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Sure thing.
With that, we'll step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off the FBI website, the Hamilton County Coroner's Office. The Indianapolis Star, Fox News, Associated Press Archives, the New York Times, Fox 59 Indianapolis, and Murderpedia. And this is the story of Herb Baumeister.
Herb Baumeister.
I've known about Herb Baumeister for a long time. I know I've mentioned him in an episode before, and so I had to go back and look and make sure I didn't cover him. I didn't find it, so I'm hoping I'm not wrong on that.
Well, I mean, we're 257 now. We're going to get a little bit of overlap. I'm constantly looking through my stuff going, have we talked about this?
Yeah, I remember talking about Herb Baumeister before. I think because he has been implicated in several things, and so that's probably why he was brought up. This is the actual story of him. And last week's case was a story where the danger felt very distant because we were talking about a highway, travelers, someone passing through. But then there's cases where that danger lives a lot closer in a house, a neighborhood, and a place that looks completely normal from the outside.
Oh, wow.
Because
totally unassuming.
Yeah. And that's where these unsettling stories sometimes occur, not ones that happen out in the wilderness or everything, but the ones that happen right next door. And in the early 1990s, so realize this is after Larry Eiler that we talked about last week, men now began disappearing again in the Indianapolis area. And this is another one that there was not a clear pattern. There was not a single location and no obvious connection that tied any of the cases together. It was just, again, missing people and lives that just quietly went away. But over time, something began to stand out that many of the men had been last seen in similar places, bars, nightlife, and really moments where strangers could approach without raising suspicion, and then they were gone. There were no witnesses, no bodies, and no answers until a discovery was made. And this is where this one's different. It's not along a highway or a remote field, but on a private property. And this was one that, by outward views, it really almost sounded very peaceful. And this was the Fox Hollow Farm. What investigators found there would change everything because it was not one victim or two. This was something much, much larger. And this is where today's journey takes us to Indiana with Herb Baumeister. And with Herb, this is the secrets that were buried at Fox Hollow Farm. Quick reminder again, where we are in our journey. This is the A to Z walk across America's serial killer, state by state, case by case. We've now moved from Illinois into Indiana, but unlike the last case, as I had said, it's not across highways in multiple states. This one really stayed close to home. In the early 90s, Indianapolis was growing. And like many cities at the time, it had its own nightlife, its own communities, and its own spaces where people gathered. And among those spaces were bars that catered to the LGBTQ community. And these were places where people could meet and relax, be themselves. And honestly, for many of the men who would later become victims in this case, those were the last places they were seen. They started to disappear, but once again, they did not immediately trigger alarm. Just like in previous cases, men went missing, but missing person cases don't always point to something violent. People leave, people move, and sometimes they just don't want to be found. But as time passed, families began to notice something that was a lot troubling. Their sons, their friends, their loved ones, they weren't coming back, and there was no explanation as to why. So as more reports came in, the similarities started to merge that many of these missing men had been last seen in bars, and some were known to have left with someone, a man who most people described as friendly and approachable, who did not raise immediate suspicion. As Zig said, he's very unassuming. That's what made the disappearances a lot more settling, because this wasn't somebody forcing victims into a situation. This was someone who was gaining people's trust. And it made everything, again, very hard to connect. These were different reports and different timelines. And so once again, police were not putting things together. And that's what played a big role in this, especially because many of the victims were part of a community that at that time did not receive the level of attention from law enforcement, which meant that early on, some of these disappearances were not investigated with any urgency whatsoever. And so because of that, time would pass, weeks, months, some cases even longer. But eventually, just like in Larry Eiler's case, the numbers of missing men became too large to ignore. Families began pushing for more attention. People started comparing stories, and investigators were once again starting to consider the possibility these were not isolated and something else was happening that was connected. But once that realization took shape, there was one major problem. There were no bodies and no crime scenes. There was no clear evidence of what had happened to the missing men. All that they had was a growing list of names, which really rose the big question that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Where were they going? The break in the case wouldn't come from a body. It actually came from a survivor, just like our last story. And it was from someone who had encountered the man believed to be responsible and managed to get away. That account would provide investigators something they hadn't had before: a description, a location, and the first real clue that would eventually lead them to the Fox Hollow farm. This was the break investigators needed: someone who survived. It was someone who encountered the person that believed to be responsible and managed to get away. And this man later told police that he had met someone at a bar in Indianapolis, that he was friendly and approachable, someone who seemed completely normal. He was offered a ride, and at some point the situation changed. What seemed very casual quickly became something else, and the person who survived realized he was in danger, but somehow he managed to escape. But more importantly, he remembered details. He had the description of a man, the vehicle, and something that would prove very critical. He now had a location. This information is what led investigators to Herb Baumeister. So Herb Baumeister lived just outside of Indianapolis, and it was on the property that we called the Fox Hollow Farm. From the outside, it looked very ordinary. It was just a home where a family was. It was a very quiet piece of land. The survivor, though, his account gave investigators enough reason to take a closer look. But at first, law enforcement did not immediately search the property because they didn't have probable cause. They needed more than suspicion, so they had to continue building the case. They looked into Herb Baumeister's background. They examined the report of missing persons and compared timelines, and this is when connections began to form. Baumeister had been seen frequenting the same bars as many of the missing men had last been seen. He matched the description given by the survivor, and he had access to a large private property. So this was a place where something could happen without being seen. So eventually, investigators were able to get permission to search the property. And this is when everything changed, because they found human remains. At first, it was very small fragments. It was just bones that were scattered across part of the land. But as the search continued, it became clear it was not a single victim or even a small number. The property contained the remains of multiple individuals. And over time, investigators recovered thousands of bone fragments from Fox Hollow Farm. They were spread all across the property. Some were buried, some were burned, some left exposed. And it would take years to fully process what had all been found. And even today, not all the remains have been definitively identified. But at this point, everything became clear that this was not a missing persons case, but that Fox Hollow Farm was a mass grave. Now Herb Baumeister was at the very center of it. He owned the property. Investigators started to close in. They tried to locate Herb Baumeister, but he was gone. He had fled the country and fled to Canada. So the case had just reached its most critical point, and Herb has disappeared beyond their reach. By the time investigators fully understood what they had found at the farm, Herb was gone. Law enforcement tried to build their case back in Indiana, and the investigation took a very, very sudden turn. In July of '96, Baumeister's car was found in a provincial park in Ontario, and inside the vehicle, authority discovered his body. He had died by suicide. So now there's no possibility of a trial. There's not going to be any courtroom or direct confession or direct answers from the man who investigators believed was responsible for the murders, but he did leave something behind. He left behind a note, and in his note, he did not confess to the murders. Instead, it focused on personal and financial problems, both family issues and business struggles. And really everything else except the case that had brought investigators to his property in the first place. So investigators are now in a very difficult position. They had a suspect, they had a property filled with human remains, but they didn't have a confession to tie it all together. So investigators worked to identify the remains found at the farm, and then this was very slow, very difficult, in a lot of cases incomplete. But in the end, they had identified at least 11 victims that have been officially identified. The bone fragments, again, suggest there could be many, many more. Some estimates place a potential number of victims significantly higher. But today, as I said, not all the remains have been matched to individuals, which means there's families out there that still don't know what happened to their loved one. And without a trial or confession, that just kind of leaves questions open about the case. How many victims were there total? Did Herb Baumeister act alone? Were all the disappearances connected to him, or were some the case of someone else? Investigators believe that he may have also been connected with a series of murders along Interstate 70, but again, without definitive proof, those connections remain theories. And we talked about the I-70 killer, and that just spurred my memory where it was. We talked about the I-70 killer, and Herb Baumeister was one of the suspects on that. But really kind of what makes it so unsettling is not just the number of victims, it's the fact that it happened on a private property in a home where a family lived, and neighbors didn't notice anything unusual. Life appeared very normal from the outside, but I mean, this was a place that beneath the surface, there was something much darker that was taking place. And it's really one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Indiana history. And this one is a stark reminder of many we've talked about before, that some of the most dangerous individuals just don't stand out. They blend in, and their lives look very ordinary. The BTK killer, the Green River killer, Israel Keys. These are people who looked very ordinary and had very ordinary lives, but behind the scenes were very extremely sinister, and they operated honestly for years that held them go unnoticed until something broke the pattern, until you had a survivor, and that's when the truth began to surface. But in this case, the truth was, of course, incomplete, because Herb Baumeister took his answers with him. This is one of those that unfortunately may never resolve. They found all the human remains, the thousands of bone fragments, and dozens of potential victims that they don't know. Lives that disappeared for years without any answers. But without a trial and confession, there's no moment where the truth is going to finally be laid out, because Herb ended his life, and before he could ever even be questioned. That leaves this case really kind of in a place that some never reach. Partially solved, but it's not complete. For families of some of the victims, some of the answers came. They got identification and confirmations, and a sense of what happened. But the questions are always going to be out there of how many victims were there? Were all of them ever found? And are there still names that we don't know? And so that's when cases like this don't end very cleanly, when you've got evidence that's scattered, and when a story stops that can't be fully told. Not when the person responsible take their answers with them. The only thing that's clear is there was a man who lived what appeared to be a normal life for many, many years. He in a home, in a community, on a piece of land where he hid the truth. Unfortunately, by the time the truth came to light, there were just too many lives taken before everybody was able to connect the dots on that. So that's the story of Herb Baumeister and what was discovered at Fox Hollow Farm.
Well, thank you, sir. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was very interesting, because like I said, something was ticking me in the back of the head that I know he had been. And it wasn't until I was going back through my notes again, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I covered the I-70 killer, and that's why his name came up. But that's going to close this stop in Indiana. Our A to Z journey will continue. Next time, we're going to head further into the Midwest, and our next stop is Iowa,
the
home of Captain Kirk.
Yes.
So, thank you for that, sir.
Isn't that right?
What? Oh, I don't remember the actual city, but I know Captain Kirk was from Iowa. He's an Iowa farm boy. So that's it. That'll take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on nerderymurdery.com, our hub, our website for everything about us, and you'll also find our link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yeah, definitely check this out. You'll actually get to see results that aren't as, hard to see through our little background because it kind of covered up. You can actually see what these things look like, and it shows the usage of them and some different perspectives on the difference between the digital signal versus the analog signal and how you can't really tell the difference.
Cool. I appreciate all your work on that.
Well, thank you, sir.
You can also find the link to our Patreon. If you wish to donate to the costs that are associated with the show, you can become a patron. That, along with our merchandise, you'll find the link to our merchandise page on our website. The merchandise and our Patreon donation go to our uploads, to our storage, to our website, everything that goes into bringing you this show each and every week. And we do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. One thing you can do for free that only takes a minute or two of your time, please leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information that we discussed. And last, but certainly not least, as always, to our good friend Chuck, you can go to sleep now.
Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck. With that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.
Nerdery and murdery fake. Voices in the wire, two dudes like the fire. Obsession and confession, games in death procession. Through the microphone they speak, dark secrets geeks seek. Nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill, the mind fills. Techie talk, ghostly howl, keep them's graveyard prowl. England thoughts collide, fascination can't hide. Retro vibes, ancient lore, never know what's in store. Or you'll find adventure, bird each episode a twist. Learn nerdery, murdery, crazy blend. Horror tales that never end. Dice roll, blood spills. Podcast thrill, the mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills. The mind fills. Techie talk, ghostly howl, keep them's graveyard prowl. England thoughts collide, fascination can't hide. Retro vibes, ancient lore, never know what's in store. Or you'll find adventure, bird each episode a twist.